Hello again, Chris Lee and Chase Robinson talking Alabama football. We're doing this on a Friday. The playoff field will not be announced for 2 more days, and Alabama fans will be nervously watching scoreboards, particularly the ACC title game. I think we feel like, Chase, if SMU beats Clemson, then Alabama's in the playoff. If Clemson beats SMU, might be up in the air a little bit. Is that fair as we start to lay the foundation for this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's no shot that Clemson would stay in the playoff if they lose this game. But yeah, the question is, what if Clemson wins? What if SMU drops this game? If it's close, if it's a blowout, we have no idea. What the committee will do with SMU, if they will reward them for being in the title game or not. So yeah, I think that's where it sits. The Alabama fans are cheering for SMU this weekend to beat Clemson.
All right, Chase, we are an SEC channel. People know that. There are probably going to be some drive-bys going, well, of course you guys are SEC homers. Of course you're going to say Alabama deserves to be in the playoffs. I've been trying hard to look at this objectively for several weeks now as we try to figure out who deserves to be in the playoff. And I've arrived at that. A case for that as to why, objectively, I think Alabama deserves to be there. Before I tell you about that, I need to remind you, BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head to BetOnline today. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Okay, Chase, just for kicks, I'm always working with predictive models to say and this is going to come in handy for bowl season when you get random matchups of teams, like who would be favored. Alabama right now, according to a model I have put together, it's points above average. It takes into account Kelly Ford, SP+, ESPN's FPI, team rankings, Jeff Sagarin, and Kenneth Massey. That's 6 sources of data that are all pretty well respected. Alabama is the number 4 team in the country in the power rankings. Again, this would be useful if you're matching anybody up. Ohio State, number 1 in the country, 26.5 points or 25.6 points above average. Alabama just a point and a half off what this model thinks is the best team in the country. By the way, Texas a 1/10 of a point behind there. So if we don't care what records are, and this is not the crux of my argument, okay? I'll make that clear, but I think it is part of it. We talk about eye test and team strength. I always like to kind of substitute what would the odds makers say if you match team A against team B. And the closest thing I can find of that, a lot of times the odds for games very closely resemble what this spits out. To me, Alabama being the number 4 team in the country in terms of power rankings, to me is kind of loud.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Like that's, and those numbers are there for a reason. Like, and so I think we can trust those numbers and say, yeah, according to that, Alabama fits right in.
Yeah. And if you want to say, well, what difference does that make? You go through the top 12. It looks a lot like the playoff field is probably going to look. The order would be Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Oregon, Tennessee, Penn State, Indiana, Miami, SMU are your top 12. Probably everybody going to be in there are really close, except for Ole Miss, which we don't think is going to make it. By the way, South Carolina's 13, so that they're close too. So if you go Alabama versus Miami, which is going to be a discussion point, Alabama would be about a touchdown favorite according to this. So, yeah, I think that screams deserving. I also looked at resume. And, again, trying to be objective, saying, is the committee doing a good job? Is it not doing a good job? Putting together a system where if you beat a team, you get a point. And how much credit you get is going to depend how good or how bad the team that you beat is. And it works the same way in reverse with losses. There's about a 58-point difference between Kent State and Ohio State and Texas. That's the bottom and the top. So you beat Kent State, you get a point for the win. You basically don't get any more points because they're the bottom team in there. And however much better you are than Kent State, you get points. So, for instance, Alabama beat Georgia. Georgia's almost 56 points above average, so you get almost 57 points for that win and so on. So you get credit or not credit. We'll get to losses in a minute. For instance, South Florida, that was about a 30-point win. It's a little skewed because it starts kind of off from the bottom teams, but that way everybody gets credit for something they do. Then you take the losses. I don't care how well you play against a team. When you lose, that is a negative. And it works the same way in reverse. If you play in an elite team, you're not penalized by the loss. Like losing to Georgia would be a couple of points. If you lose to an awful team, you pick up a lot of points. This system would be set up to really penalize a team that loses more games. Alabama would be the only 3-loss team in the field. Alabama still ends up in the top 12 by this. If you want to mix it and say go power rankings, or 40% of it, which is eye test, 60% of it is resume, the good, bad, and everything, Alabama ends up as the number 7 team in this system that I put together. So according to this, and again, it's just a model I put together. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I'm trying to do this objectively and logically and saying, what would it look like if you put it together like that? To me, the fact that Alabama is the number 7 team in the country under that system, to me, says something. I think that, to me, that's why I feel so confident that if Alabama gets in, yes, I know Alabama lost to Tennessee. I know Alabama lost at Oklahoma and did not look good. I know Alabama lost at Vanderbilt. But you consider who they beat. You got Georgia. You got South Carolina. You got Missouri at home. You went to LSU and won. You got to win over Auburn. You got to win at Wisconsin. I don't know that any team in the country had 6 wins to bank the way that Alabama did, which is what kind of helped them in this system a little bit. My point is, I think if you start looking at it objectively and scoring what people do, to me, Alabama getting in is not a failure of the system. It's something they earned, and 3 losses are a byproduct of a schedule that most teams in other leagues don't have to play.
Yeah, and I was looking through some of the past college football playoffs, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but it seems like, and this is kind of going the last 10 years of the college football playoff, the playoff committee has never really looked at losses. It's who have you beaten? Yeah. It's about wins most of the time, and that's what's helped Alabama. You just said it, the wins that they have. Like, yes, they have losses that are not great. We can be upfront and honest about that, especially Oklahoma. They didn't look very good.
Yeah.
But their wins are good. And that's what the committee looks at, is who you've beaten, and they care about wins over losses. That's just traditionally what the committee has done, and that's what has helped Alabama get in.
Yeah. I just think any way you slice it, you look at results, you look at would they be favored against other teams. I don't know. Alabama is an easy target, right? They've been on top for a long time. They took on some water in some road games, but to me, back out of it. And the thing, too, and look, I will defend Indiana being in the playoff. A lot of people want. I think Indiana is deserving. Now, it might be the last team in, but I know Indiana's schedule was not great. But you win 11-1.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to win 11 games against anybody. Look what happened to Miami last week. And I think you take that, and then you go in the SEC, where even the bottom-end teams in this league can beat just about anybody. I don't think that's anything that anybody in any other conference has to deal with. And I think, who was it this week? Shane Beamer said it best. Like, why would you even bother to play a tough out-of-conference schedule? It doesn't benefit you. And so to me, the schedule is just kind of another point in Alabama's favor.
It is, yeah, and it was a tough schedule. You mentioned it. Teams in other leagues wouldn't even play a schedule like this, and in Alabama, again, they had their losses, but they handled games well, and because it came down to there was one spot, and there has to be 12 teams in a 12-team playoff, and so there's one spot left. And look, there are teams that they're good teams on the other side of Alabama. Ole Miss, South Carolina, for example. I think both of those teams, and all three, Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss, are better than Miami. They don't deserve to be in there. But when you look at these three SEC teams of Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, those are three good teams, and three teams I could see winning playoff games. But in the end, they had to choose one. That's Alabama, because, one, they've beaten South Carolina. Ole Miss has beaten South Carolina. But then you look at what Alabama's done, the wins that they have, and that's how Alabama's gotten there. I don't think I've seen a lot of talk of hey, they're Alabama biased, all this. I think they just went by the numbers, and Alabama was the choice to put in there.
Here's a good test. If you're the coach in the other locker room and your life depends on a game that you're about to play against fill in the blank who, would you rather play Miami? Would you rather play SMU? Would you rather play Alabama? And to me, Alabama is the team that I don't want to play of those three, warts and all. And keep in mind, warts get more exposed when you play the best of the best. And my goodness, the schedule that Alabama played this year, you've got Georgia is a playoff team. South Carolina is a team a lot of people are arguing should be in the playoff. I think they're close. Missouri's a top 25 team. LSU, I think, still a top 25 team, but not should be. That's 4 top 25 wins. You lose at Tennessee. Nobody won at Tennessee this year. If you want to argue flaws, and like once we get into the bubble of the playoff, which is kind of where Alabama is, okay, they lost to Oklahoma on the road. They lost at Vandy. Still, I think that the weight of the evidence and the good that they did, to me, still outweighs that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm in complete agreement with all you just said, and we'll see if they get in. I mean, a lot hangs on the SMU Clemson game, but I think Alabama very well could be in the college football playoff.
We'll wait and see. We'll be here to talk about it when the field is unveiled. Best way to get that, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We cover baseball, football, basketball year-round here at Southeastern 16. For Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching Southeastern 16, presented by BetOnline.